The brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp, brothers Wisp. The brothers Wisp. The brothers.
You're now listening to Greg. It's the brothers.
Hey everybody, this is Greg with the Brothers Wisp number 125. Today, it's just Mikey and I. Mikey from Chicagoland.
Hey, how's it going?
All right. It's like, I don't know how, but you are, that could be a sound bite. Because you are so consistent with, hey, how's it going? Because I use, whenever I'm synchronizing the audio and all this stuff, I listened to your very first line to synchronize. So I've heard you say, hey, how's it going? Probably 1,000 times now at this point.
Yet, as I said it, I'm like, that is the exact same way I always say that exact same thing.
I think I'm pretty consistent too, so I don't want to pretend like I'm mixing it up or anything over here.
That if only I was creative enough to find something else.
All right, do you have the show notes open, Mike? All right, why don't you start us off on our sponsor corner by here? I'll do the Cambium plug, then you do the Sonar plug. We'll switch it off. So right. Cambium, they are still doing the EPMP bundle. I'm assuming they're probably going to do it throughout the rest of the year. So whenever you get ready to start that new WISP, and January 1st, you got a good deal to get you off the ground because it's $6,000 value, but you're only paying $2,000. You get 6 months of WISP.net automated billing. You get some RF element twist horns. You get 2 hours of one-on-one with an EPMP network engineer. No sales pitch. It's just you and the engineer asking whatever questions you can possibly think of. Get all the tips and tricks, siphon all that knowledge out of his brain. You can find that in the link of the podcast description or on the blog post, either one. All right, Mikey.
And our longest sponsor, Sonar.software, brought to you by Sonar, a scalable, intuitive, and comprehensive ISP billing and operational support system. Learn more at Sonar.software.
All right, we also have QuickBit.com. They are indoor and outdoor 60 gigahertz kit. They've got crazy feature set on their API, deployment tools, solid distance, up to 8 clients connected at once. And we have a new little bit of scuttlebutt. It is that the store, they are expecting it to open next week. I'm not going to be mad at them if it's not, but I'm really looking forward to seeing it. They're also saying the new K60C Plus radios had a little bit of a delay, I guess, in the plastic mold making, which kicked back the FCC certification a little bit, but those things are going to be going out the door at the end of the month, so look for those guys in early January. So everything else is in stock. I believe the K60 and the regular K60Xs, so you should be able to grab all that stuff out of the store hopefully next week, or I don't know, is next week when this podcast airs? I'm not sure. Or the following week, one or the other. I guess it just depends what they meant by next week. So we'll see them soon. And then also tower coverage. You see the blurb down there in the bottom right, Mikey? You want to cover that one?
I do. Tower coverage is your RF propagation system to empower your network. Real-time data metrics enable your coverage area, reaching your customer base, and more. The industry's best RF propagation mapping system allows website integration for customer signup and pre-qualification. Use this data to scientifically plan network expansion and help your WISP succeed. Get a free trial today at towercoverage.com.
Every time I say scientific, I don't know, it just makes me a little giddy. I don't know why. I just like the idea of being a scientist and being scientific about things. I think it's pretty baller.
You'd be slightly less giddy if you were into the cosmos and our monitoring of it with the I'm trying to pronounce this incorrectly, the Arecibo Observatory crash.
Everybody's seen that video a million times by now, I suppose.
Yeah. I don't know. I know I shared it, that drone angle on our Facebook page. So if you haven't, go there or just look at the whatever federal government that is, NSF. It's pretty epic, but yet also pretty sad that the world's largest transmitter is now no more. China built a larger receiver, but it had no transmit capabilities. Ours was the only one that could transmit. That was that.
So large. What are we trying to communicate with aliens with the transmitter part?
I think it was actually used for like radar operations in detecting. I don't think it was space debris. I think it was asteroids and stuff. You know, trying to find where all the things are that could
I
hurt
guess you
us.
fire at a signal, look for it to bounce back, sort of thing.
Yeah, and if you've got a 300-meter wide antenna, you're going to get some gain.
Get that gain, get them gains, boys. Is that what they're always talking about at the gym?
Yeah.
Must be tight. They're all wisps. Who knew? I just thought they were bros. Learn something new every day.
I just got an idea on our sponsor section here. So every time, we should have somebody else read through it. You know, we have a varying audience. You know, bam, Nick B. If you're on the show, read the Sonar.
Is that what it is? You gotta. So we mix and match it, make them. So you got to do your best radio voice or movie phone operator, I guess.
Yeah, well, you know, it would probably do the sponsor some justice too, because usually everyone's probably just used to you saying the whole thing, so they just wait till they stop hearing your voice and then they listen.
It's diabolical, man.
You know, whereas if we're always, always changing it up, having the guests say it, or or like we did this time, you and me and you and me,
Yeah.
they'll pay
Hack
attention
the system.
more.
I like it. Then we get some ASMR from everybody. All right. Well, you ready to jump in? We have
Sure.
a bunch of MikroTik stuff, and then let's see, Mike's got a little bit of various BGP-ish sort of things. Well, it looks like his stuff is MikroTik too, so we'll tack that stuff on. And then at the end, I wanted to talk a little bit about my data center experience in my recent move and how interesting. So I'm just gonna complain. I guess is what it really boils down to. I'm gonna cry a little bit. So let's talk about all of the stuff that's been hitting the change logs. So for one, and MikroTik, this is just going to be the stable branch 647.8. There was one particular line that spoke to me, and it was ARM improved system stability. So for the ARM-based MikroTiks that have been having problems, right? Not everything, because not everything's been having problems. There's some ARM products that have been working just fine, but there are a handful. I guess 4011's one. Not the 1009. What is that? What's the thing? What's the other?
The 1100 AHX4.
Yeah, there's those two, but isn't there a CCR that was also having lockups that was ARM based? Or am I crazy?
Well, there's an ARM based CCR, the 2004. It's the new ARM 64. I don't know. I know it's been having issues, but I don't know if it was the same issues, or if ARM improved system stability covers both platforms.
So, from what I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, the 4011 and the 1100, this seems to be the fix for those, right?
That's
All
what
right.
it sounds like.
I'm not sure about the CCR, that model. So it's the stable branch, which means it's the newest, latest, greatest, right? It's not the bleeding edge, right? It's not the beta, but it is the stable branch. I generally wait for long-term support, but if I was running a 4011 in production, I'm pretty sure I would go ahead and update to the stable branch before waiting, because I'm not sure. I doubt it's going to be too long before they backport it to the long-term, but if you've been having problems, give it a go. I've heard several people say that they were running the beta where this fix was introduced, and they've been pretty stable since then, so it's very promising.
I'm a fan of the long-term branch for use, in my general network. But if your product is not stable, then going to the stable branch would be highly advised.
For sure. All right, let's look at some of the beta stuff. So I just pulled out three things. I'm sure there's much more in there you're going to be interested in, but it is MikroTik Beta 7.1 B3, and the very first line that I have found to be interesting was added new well, I mean, there were other ones. I mean, I don't want to prioritize them. This is just how the list lands. Added new experimental wireless package Wi-Fi Wave 2 for ARM devices with more than 256 megabytes of RAM, CLI only. So that is going to be, there's very specific models, and it looks like HAP-AC3, non-LTE, Audience LTE 6, and the 4011 Alphabet Soup that's got wireless. I'm not going to read all those numbers and letters. That'll confuse myself. But it looks like they're adding some additional feature sets, and I think they said in this announcement, it'll be in the show notes, I think it says somewhere about 802.11ax support or something like that.
Indeed. I saw AX support. I saw MIMO. There's something else I saw that I forgot.
WPA3.
That was interesting. Yeah. Yep. As well as the, opportunistic encryption that comes along with WPA3. I assume it's going to be less good than, pre-shared key or, radius based, but definitely better than, encryption at all.
Yeah, I might be wrong, but I think one of my MDE users called in about their Mac saying that their internet connection was less secure, or was using less secure protocols, and it was using WPA2 PSK. So I guess the Mac stuff is starting to want you to use WPA3 already, and I didn't realize a lot of manufacturers were pushing out WPA3 already. So I guess Apple's ahead of the curve.
But yeah, well, if I remember correctly, and I may not, WPA3 was going to mostly be a software thing. There wasn't a lot of hardware change to make it happen. Because I don't think it really changed encryption protocols and stuff. It just changed the way that it, coordinated it. I could be completely full of crap, so I'll just stop talking.
Yeah, for sure. It also says 400 megabits per second max data rate for 2.4 gig band on those interfaces as well. To be honest with you, I'm not of the mind to run beta 7 yet, so I'm not going to be able to test any of these features out. But I'm assuming there's a chunk of folks out there that are really keen for this stuff, so hopefully we'll get a little bit of, we'll get some reports back on that. All right.
Oh, sure. And I guess for those of you in 2.4 land, AX support is good because AC never was brought back to 2.4. It was a 5 gig only. So this is the first 2.4, IEEE improvement since N. That's a long time ago.
Yeah, that was a minute ago. Wi-Fi 3 or whatever. I don't know I don't have the numbers memorized. I just have the protocol names memorized, or the versions 802.11, whatever. Let's see.
Sure.
What else was in that?
I don't even care about the Wi-Fi numbers because that's just marketing.
Yeah.
Junk.
Well, I mean, I guess it keeps it simpler. You had expressed interest in CHR added support for SR-IOV. I actually had to look up what that was, and it says it is in virtualization, single root input-output virtualization. That's SR-IOV. In layman's terms, it looks like, and correct me if I'm wrong because I generally am, we needed Thrift to talk about all this stuff. He's such a nerd for this stuff. Yeah. But it's the ability for, in a virtual environment, I think it's multiple virtual machines to share one physical PCI Express, like NIC. Isn't that the idea?
Yeah, and I mean, that can happen already. It's just not as good as if you had SR-IOV support.
I think Thrift was saying something like the CHR already had the ability to take advantage of most of the main features that people know about in SR-IOV, so he wasn't really particularly sure what additional things they added in there, but it's there.
Yeah. And I, given the direction in virtualization that we've had in routing in the industry as a whole, but also within RouterOS v6, given that the supplied hardware wasn't really up to the BGP task, having to go elsewhere. This is really gonna, 7 by itself would have made a big difference, but now having SR-IOV will really help you push the throughputs on a given set of hardware.
Rock and roll, better performance. That's what everybody wants, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So this one, I think this is probably the most interesting thing in the list for me. And it was added support for Cake and FQ Codal queue types. So all I knew was that these were the silver bullet as far as queuing goes for internet users. It supposedly does a lot of magic. Thrift, I think, was saying that a lot of the major manufacturers like your Netgear, your Linksys, all those guys are running this stuff under the hood to help tune internet bandwidth shaping and stuff like that. I think, isn't this what Preseam really uses on the back end, like their secret sauce?
Yeah, Preseam uses it. Ubiquity Smart Queues, those use FQ Codal. It's been a built-in Linux feature for some time now, but because MikroTik was using such an old Linux kernel, they couldn't take advantage of it. Now that they've stepped up their kernel game, I suspect that moving to a newer kernel has helped with a significant number of these new features in V7. They're just, going through the past 5 to 10 years of kernel development and just banging out all these new things that have been added. But, and so to kind of explain, from what I understand, and I'm no queuing expert, but from what I understand, Cake is just building upon FQ Codal. I don't know that necessarily replaces it, but I think it just does a lot of the same things, but maybe a little bit differently. Perhaps for some more specific applications.
From a little bit of reading I've done, I think you're exactly accurate. It sounds like Cake is somewhat of an evolution to FQ Codal that maybe runs a little bit cleaner on the CPU and is easier to configure. It makes it seem like so. There you go.
Okay. But for those of you that don't know what either of those are, not that, again, I'm not an expert really at this, but one of the magic things with FQ Codal is that you don't really, all the other queuing types, we've got to specify a wide variety of limits and parameters and burst types and this and that. And, I know that, Greg, you've had the, QoS script, and so has Andrew, and so has, several others. And it's just this massive pile of MikroTik configuration to, protect more sensitive services, while not allowing other ones to abuse the connection. And really, with FQ Codal, it somehow figures out, what are the important flows and what are the not important flows, and then make sure that the important ones aren't abused. And I suspect that's somewhat related to, size of the stream. If there's a VoIP call going on at, 90 kilobits, it's not going to let your, FTP download or your Netflix 4K stream coming in at 20 megs clobber it. It's going to reserve enough because it knows, oh, hey, this is a 90K stream, so let's make sure that we keep 90K for this guy at all times.
Yeah. It also says that I guess there's a lot of magic built in for the matching to determine what queue to put everything in, but I think it also, at least in kind of the doc page on bufferbloat.net, it says that it has diffserv support now. So you should be able to do some marking to have it pop into different queues, I guess. So if there is some specific type of traffic that's really important to you, you should be able to classify that and have it hit, I guess, the priority queues.
Oh, nice.
Because they're talking about like how do they classify like BitTorrent, right? And so I guess that helps it stay current. So if there's some new way of doing it and they haven't ported it in there, you could fix it with diffserv, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah, that's cool. But yeah, it's supposedly, what is it? It's like the easy button for quality of service for your customer devices. So who's not looking for that? I think that's pretty cool.
For sure.
And it's very mature, right? It's been out in the industry for a long time. Everybody loves it. So now we get to take advantage of it. I say we get to take advantage of it. It's only in version 7. I'm not going to hold my breath and expect them to backport that stuff to v6. At least I don't really think they can, because it's, it's baked into newer versions of the Linux kernel, and v6 is just running old stuff, right? So that's why they were able to put it in version 7. Does that sound accurate?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to cobble together a lot of things I've heard from various people, so I think that's what I recall correctly. But I'm sure I'm saying it all wrong, and I love to speak for Andrew Thrift, and he loves having to come in and fix all of our mess that we make. So I definitely want to attribute everything I know to him.
And so I guess what we should have done through that is we should have made sure that we explained something wrong to force Thrift to then come on the next episode and correct us. Because most of the time that happens when it's like, it's in Thrift's wheelhouse and we do it wrong.
What abuses me is apparently when we say stuff wrong, Andrew Thrift gets messages about it, not us. That's what really pleases me about the whole situation.
That, I kind of see, like, if your kid screws up, who's the school going to call? The kid or you? The school's going to call you and say, hey, your kid really screwed up. So,
So now Andrew's
in this
dad
case, Thrift
scenario,
is the parent. Yeah.
I don't really think of myself as a loose cannon. I think it was a little bit more level-headed. No, I'm an idiot, a complete idiot. All right, Mike. So you've got a couple things on BGP. I guess you've been doing some MikroTik BGP work. And one in particular is... Oh, no. You've got another thing in here that you find interesting. Routing. Go ahead and tell me about that one.
And so, another change in the 7.1 beta 3. The first part on the routing, it doesn't mean much to me. Mostly because I haven't really looked at v7 routing at all, so I'm not sure how those are useful or not. But the part that really got me is that I know v7 routing's entirely different, and then now we have a BGP configuration migration from RouterOS v6 after upgrade. So I look at that as, I look at a v7 wiki. I don't know what I'm doing to make this work. I threw up a CHR. I configure BGP how I normally would. Upgrade to v7. Okay. Now I see how it's supposed to be done. Because, showing me someone else's example only takes me so far. If you take my v6, put it into v7 language, okay, now I get what
That's a shrewd move on their part. We've, multiple occasions, commented on how they're drastically changing the configuration of BGP in version 7. So this is a little bridge to help us, migrate between the two. So that's not a bad idea. Even if you don't just straight upgrade your router in production, saying you migrate your configurations to some lab piece of equipment and then do the upgrade, which is probably the better option, because sometimes stuff disappears when you do that, right, in production. It'll at least get you up and running.
Sure. After I saw that, I kind of got an idea. MikroTik, why don't you make a website where you can just drop in your v6 configuration and it spits out to you what the v7 configuration would be, so that then before we even try spinning up a router, we can already try to figure things out. I know there's the manual, but some of us, it's like, we just need an already working system to figure out how it's really supposed to work.
The easy button. I get it. You want to be lazy.
Yeah. That's definitely one of the things, yes.
I prefer the term efficient. You want to be efficient. That's how I like to look at it. All right, so tell me about your, because I know you were asking in the chat, and I saw you ask on Facebook about this one as well, the BGP session monitoring.
Yeah, and so in about a 36-hour period, under more than one hat that I wear, I came to the realization that we don't always know when our BGP sessions go down. You know, at one of the networks, it was like, okay, well, I was alerted to it because, we lost outside connectivity. Well, it wasn't everything, the IX was still up, but both of our full route providers were down. One of them was out due to a planned maintenance that I put on the wrong day, so I wasn't aware. But the other one, I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know when it went down. Did it go down because the router got overloaded from the other provider going down and processing all the routes, and therefore it dropped that session too? Seems unlikely because all the other sessions were fine. So it was probably out longer than that. And I don't know when it was down.
So something I used to do on my Cisco kit was I would dump all the syslog back to a syslog collection server and just alert on BGP events. So I would see when like a peer went down. It wasn't like in my monitoring system like showing a graph or anything, but it would show that. Would that suffice for you reckon?
I would think so. I haven't built anything useful in the syslog processing for anything. I've always it's always been reactive, not proactive. After it's broken, I go looking to see why it broke. And not so much, alert me when it's broken. So that's definitely something that could happen. I use Libre NMS because it's easy. I know that NetXMS could do it because there's a whole syslog processing section. I don't know if Libre would allow me to do things like that. I mean, I'm not saying it can't. I just don't know.
On the SNMP side, you said it's hard to add custom OID stuff into Libre. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. So like, I know that initially it wasn't even an option. Then I think they made it do something, but I couldn't find the made you be able to do some aspect of it, but then I couldn't find the documentation on how to do it. So then I'm not sure if I actually remembered that it added it correctly.
So it's not like an easy thing.
Yeah, or I just got impatient and looking and gave up.
Because I know like in MikroTik for stuff that doesn't exist, that's not exposed via SNMP normally, you can write a custom script. You can put it in there, and you can actually call that script with a specific OID. So you can kind of SNMP pull a specific OID. So what I was doing was I had a VPN server, or I guess it was a VPN concentrator that I had stood up, and I was using User Manager to allow them to like add users and stuff, so they'd have like the little GUI right there built in, and I would pull that router every, I don't know, I think it was just on the regular 5-minute polling cycle or whatever, and it would hit that, and it would run a custom script that would count the number of users that were in User Manager, and I think I would ignore like admin, so it would just get like the actual users they had in there, and then it would just return a number, and I would graph that number, and that way I would be able to bill them at the end of the month. So these people, they were clever, because when I first started working there, they were being billed like a very specific day of the month, and so you would see like 50 users go away the day before, then it would hit the billing cycle, and then you'd see like 50 users come back the day after. So when the contract came up, I renewed it with some additional language that we would poll them daily, and we would bill them on the peak number of users they had in the system at any one time during the month. So I would just graph it every day, and then that would take care of that, and then it would just send a report to accounting once a month, like on the billing day, that showed the overall graph, and then it had like the max number on there. And lo and behold, the month after we implemented that, the fluctuations stopped. So it went on for years, and then I magically just stopped after 1 month. I was like, oh, well, good. We licked that problem. But I wonder if you couldn't do something pretty simply with the BGP session as well. So you could just have the script look at all of your sessions and look for the status, and then return like a number. Like 1 is good, 2 is idle, 3 is like shut down or disabled or something. You could graph that, but I guess if Libra doesn't easily let you add that stuff in, I guess that would be kind of problematic, huh?
It somebody did post a script that they use that generates email, and so it will send a. I was scrolling back to see if I could find it so I could speak more intelligently about what the script does.
Yeah, I think it was Chad.
But yeah, Chad, I see it now, and yeah, it would watch. It's a lot. I haven't even read the script. I'm not a MikroTik scripting person, so I'm looking at this like, well, it does what I want now. It supposedly, so I just gotta figure out what it does. But in essence, it runs the script every 60 seconds and then sends an email that says, on this host name, this peer is idle. It says the peer's name, and then it tells you in the subject, this peering session is down. And so getting a minute-by-minute email would certainly catch one's attention.
Yeah, it could also drive you bonkers if you know it's idle. Or it's like a maintenance window, and it's going to last for several hours, and you keep getting bombarded with that stuff.
You just have to disable the script during playing.
Well, you might be able to modify it so that it only alerts on a change of status, right? So if it goes idle to working, then it'll give you an alert. If it's working for a while and it goes idle, something like that, maybe.
Sure, and it may very well do that. I haven't dug through it to see what it is that it does.
For sure.
That was only a couple days ago.
That's the stuff that popped into my head on all of that. So they all sound viable, huh? So tell me about your big MikroTik throughput stuff.
Well, and so I was trying to find examples of people in production on, and I didn't directly say this, not CCRs, because I said, with full table routing, because I assume that people aren't using CCRs for full table routing, which I know they are. But trying to figure out how much throughput people are getting through their MikroTik systems. Because, every now and then we'll see someone will do a kind of a lab test that is phenomenal. It's like, okay, well, what are people doing in the real world when it's also doing all this other stuff, not just your, B test. And then I was going to attempt to then, when I got some of that data back, to then kind of, okay, what kind of hardware is it running on? What's your, hypervisor configuration if it's virtualized? To try to build some sort of a picture of, big throughput MikroTik systems. Because what we're running into in one of my hats is that we're running a Core i7 something based system, and it's great on BGP convergence, but we're really hitting the throughput ceiling at, all depending on what's going on, somewhere between 7 and 11 gigs. After that point, we get packet loss and all kinds of other crap. And it's a high megahertz system, and a lot of people keep beating the drum of big megahertz, big megahertz, big megahertz. Port count is not important, or is less important. And I don't think that's true.
I think
it is for BGP, for sure.
I think you're right, Mike. I think that's true on certain accounts and false on others, right? So we all know that MikroTik, if you are pulling in multiple big feeds, you want to have as big of single like as many megahertz on a CPU, right? Well, not necessarily, right? I guess the more efficient new processors, even with a lower megahertz rating, they're going to have more computations per second or whatever. So, I mean, I guess that could be a little bit messy, but you want more hardware on a single core, I guess, theoretically for the BGP, but everything else, right, that can take advantage of multiple cores, theoretically would suffer, right, if you don't have as much support there.
Sure, yeah. It's where I was going with that is that, like, those are almost, I mean, it's not entirely, but they trend towards being mutually exclusive, as in the systems that have extremely high single core performance are going to be your desktop gamer systems, and they're only going to have 4, 6, 8, 10 cores. I'm not sure what Intel's up to now on their largest ones. But when but those are just using core i7s or core i9s or whatever. But when you look at a Xeon system, you can put in 2 sockets, you can put in 4 sockets. Those CPUs could have, I'm not sure where Intel's at now, 20, 30, 40 cores per socket. I mean, that's a totally different game, but they're only 2/3, 3/4 of the clock rate of the desktop chip. And so it's like, okay, well, trying to establish where people are actually going with some of these things. And, I may not find it out there. I may just have to do it myself.
It also begs the question, is the CPU where you're actually bottlenecking on your throughput? Do you think
on the one system we've got it is. It's at, I don't remember the exact numbers, 85%, 90% plus CPU usage. So chances are it's probably hitting the red line, more often than we care to. It's just been a few months since I looked at that one. But, obviously there's a variety of other things going on, but it's, CPU was definitely a concern. That's why I started looking down that road. Because really, I was looking for a system that would do not just 7 to 11 gigs, but 20, 30, 40. And, there's just no amount of optimization is going to quadruple the performance.
Yeah, everybody I've talked to that's pushing that much bandwidth has moved to bigger iron. So they're running probably like a Juniper system or maybe like an Arista or something like that.
Yeah, and so that's, in the one case, that's where I'm kind of going is, let's move some things off to a, layer 3 switch. But it's just kind of like, why did they move to something else? Is it because they didn't know what system they could take to get there? Was it because the software was no longer mature enough for them? There's a variety of things. It's tough to nail down.
To me, like trying to put myself in their shoes, it's a simple answer in that the exact thing you're running into. I don't know what combination of hardwares I need to make this perform in the way I need to, right? And so I've heard people say, so if you're running it, you're doing it in virtualization, you need to make these tweaks, these modifications, look for this hard, so it's like, I don't want to play that game and then guess wrong. I'd rather, if I know that I can just go and pick up this one Juniper box and it's going to perform reliably and it's going to give me the throughput I need, then, you do it. What does Nick Braulio say? Buy once, cry once. I guess, you pay a lot for the heavy iron, but, it's going to hurt your heart a little bit that first time when you see your wallet empty. But then you sleep better because you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to guess, did I pick all the right combination of things? If there was a magical MikroTik product that we could do the exact same thing and know that I could get 20 gigs through this box reliably and not have to sweat it and pull my multiple feeds, I'm sure I would do that because I really like the MikroTik interface. I like all the extra features it has. I've gotten really fast with it. My workflow is really fast compared to like a Cisco or anything else. I'm so much faster with a MikroTik. So, it is what it is, though, right?
Oh, sure. It's not to detract from the, yes, there will always be, if you're virtualizing something, an infinitely more complicated configuration than just buying a box, because there's infinitely more control. There's so many more things that you can adjust. But where I'm trying to go is trying to figure some of that stuff out for the greater community. What a lot of the thought has been, focus has been about solving BGP performance, because that's where the CCRs were terrible. From what I understand, for just packet routing, they do really well. Fortunately, I need a system that can do both. And so just trying to, kind of the reaction to something with really bad BGP performance is, let's make BGP as best as we can. Okay, well, what about everything else? Somebody has done a few MUM presentations about virtualization and performance differences between hypervisors and whatnot, and everybody latches on to the Hyper-V is the fastest, so always use Hyper-V. Well, no, Hyper-V was the fastest BGP table load time, but it wasn't the fastest on the throughput. And I even went as far as going through the presentation, pulling the numbers out, putting it into a spreadsheet, and graphing them, and was like, oh, yeah, see, here's here's the trends of platform and packet size and this, and really for throughput, that platform's, if I remember correctly, it's not the best for moving the bits. And really, from my perspective, I don't care if, once it's less than a minute, I'm really not overly concerned with table load time. I mean, lower is better, but 17 seconds versus 28 seconds or whatever it was.
Yeah. In that case, I'm going to stick with the product that I'm more familiar with and trust more, or just like better, whatever it happens to be.
Oh yeah, it's like I no longer care about that 10 second, 15 second, 20 second difference in BGP table load time if it's not going to be as fast throughput. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and I have gone on a tangent here with hypervisors, but my intent was, okay, what general configuration, not necessarily this motherboard with this CPU with these BIOS settings. No, just like, does a generation, on a generation 6 processor or 8 processor or 10 processor, does, can a dual socket, 30 or 40 core system, can it move the bits? And if it can, all right.
All right. Let me ask you a question that just popped into my head. We've always talked about MikroTik being the budget-friendly hardware, the budget-friendly software, however you want to look at it, right? Hardware being I can go and buy a router board and rock and roll with it, and it's gonna, it's not gonna burn a hole in my pocket. Or I could use the software on a piece of x86 hardware or inside of virtualization now, very efficiently, and it's great and all. But would we be willing to pay a little bit more and get a little bit more? So what if MikroTik switched the CHR model to be a yearly license, like a subscription based, right? So you'd pay yearly for that. But in doing that, they're also going to produce on their wiki a hardware compatibility list. Like, here's a super micro with these NICs. In this configuration, you are going to get the maximum performance. You'll be able to get these results on BGP. This is what you can expect for throughput, firewall, blah, blah, blah. And then they can say, all right, on maybe some older generations of equipment, some old Dells you can get off of eBay with this hardware complement in this configuration, you can expect blah, 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 right? So basically, they would give you the hardware list to go out and purchase the stuff, and it would show you maximum performance, right? So for me, what I'm thinking in my head is, why would they go through the effort to build that list and do all that testing when they aren't really as incentivized, because if I pay like $80 for a license, I can get 10 gigs of throughput, as opposed to buying their hardware, which I'm sure they make more margin off of selling the hardware or whatever. Not to say the hardware would go away, because the port density, the convenience, the low power utilization, there's so many reasons to use the hardware. But if you could maybe incentivize them by switching the license model, making it subscription based, so that they know they're going to get long-term returns off of this, do you think that they would be a little bit more convinced to put something like this together for us? Like, what do you like? Obviously, we can't put ourselves in their heads, but like, to me, that would be kind of maybe a happy medium, like a trade-off, maybe.
Sure, and so perhaps not on the podcast, but I have said before, I am willing to pay more for the software. I mean, looking at, 10 gigs per interface is a $95 one-time license charge. I would pay that yearly. Yeah. I'd pay that twice a year. I'd pay that quarterly. Probably even monthly.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, people that are pushing that many packets, that's not that big a deal. It's really not.
Yeah, and so, I would gladly do that. And I mean, I'm not sure how many I run right now, but I mean, by the time I'm done doing all the things that I've got my fingers into, I'm going to be running, 15, 20 CHRs across all my different hits. I'm fine with paying more for that.
So would you consider doing that, paying a yearly license, if they would give you like, hey, here's the hardware complement that's going to be able to get you the throughput you're looking for?
Oh, sure. It's and then on the other side, I've been saying for somewhere for a while, maybe not on the podcast. I think, what would it cost for them to do it? One generic sysadmin, 2 generic sysadmins. You don't even need a programming genius. You don't need a networking genius. You don't need a genius to take variety of PCs or servers or Raspberry Pis or whatever it is that you're just run through, pay one guy $40,000-$50,000 a year, whatever
you
it
probably
is.
Use a college intern.
And, yeah, like install Hyper-V on this box, run these specific sets of tests. He doesn't have to understand what he's doing even. He can just dump the configuration that someone else already made onto the router.
Yeah, we're going to buy you $100,000 in hardware, try all these various pieces in all these various ways, figure out which, just graph everything. That would be cool.
Yeah, and just, and that's someone that's just all they do is they just go through that. And it can't be that expensive to do. I don't know if they're counting on their consulting partners to do that, but I mean, if a consulting partner does it, they're not going to make it
public
available to the greater. I mean, some of it, but enough to tease someone to buy their consulting service. They're not going to, for the greater community, here's all the examples that we tested and all the scenarios. Yeah. That'd be foolish. And even if, and then, so they're going to do that testing or whatever and keep it internal. So then each consultant is going to do the same thing. And it's just like, okay, or MikroTik does it once and then puts it out there. Or, maybe they put it under some sort of key. This is available for, I don't, for MikroTik certified people, or, I don't know what, sorts of access they could apply to it, but they should at least do the work and figure it out.
I just think about it, as much as we would like it, it has to make business sense, right? It has to make financial sense for them to do that. And so I was trying to, in my head, figure out what combination of factors would actually have that make sense, and some kind of a subscription model, I think, would probably be the way to go as far as that is concerned. I mean, I don't know, honestly. I'd be curious. So one day they can come on the podcast and answer all these questions for us.
I went searching just now for Riga sysadmin, and there's apparently a Riga, New York. That's, I guess, not going to do me any good. I guess. Yeah, like, I'm not even sure what sort of websites even, what are the employment websites in Latvia to see what something like that would cost. Just because, I'm just trying to get like a spitball of like, okay, so, it would only take 50 licenses, 100 licenses in this reoccurring model that we're, venturing about to, be able to do that. And, yeah, that's not really working for me. So I guess I'm not going to be able to do that in real time. I'll have to look it up later, then comment on the video or something with what I figure out, how that break down, how many 10 gig or how many unlimited licenses would they have to sell on a perpetual basis, or not perpetual, on a subscription basis to be able to afford to do that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, you ready to hear me complain some more?
Well, I guess a quick tangent off of that. Someone else that we know has done something similar, not with performance testing of new hardware, but someone else has been buying a whole bunch of old network kit that they're just labbing up and running their software against. I don't know if he said it publicly or not, but just to have racks and racks full of hardware that just run tests on. And wasn't very much. Just go on eBay and just, I don't have one of these yet. $50 here, $100 there. Build it up.
Piecemeal it.
Yeah, and so let's I shall welcome you to Mike's complaining corner. Greg, what do you wish to complain about today?
It's a bit of complaint, a bit of I don't know. All right, so here it is. We did our data center move the Monday of Thanksgiving here in the U.S. What was that? Not this Monday, but last Monday. So it was a little bit ago. It was just after the last podcast. So some people were trying to download it, and of course they weren't able to because the servers were offline while we did the move. So here's the thing. The data center I was in before, the UPS, basically died. We lost power multiple times, and they just decided, hey, we're going to force everybody to move out of this facility as opposed to repair the old failing UPS. So we had kind of this timeline put over our heads, and we had to get out of there. I think they wanted us out by December 1st, so we just snuck out in time, obviously, like the 21st or something of November. So we got out of there pretty quick. Or rather, it took us, well, they didn't give us a lot of heads up. Anyway, I digress. We got out of there. But it was the data center I used to work at. So I know all the people there. I've seen behind the curtain. I know how everything works. And so my experience was very different than I had anticipated. So we show up and we start powering all our stuff down, and that goes fine. So I've got one guy powering everything down while I'm going to get like a cart and get everything ready. And so they're going to show me to my space. Well, my badge isn't working on anything. So I'm already an existing customer in there. I've been an existing customer for a long time. I'm an existing customer for another data center space in that same facility. So for whatever reason, they messed up my access. No big deal. So we get in there, I get the cart, take it over, and we're unloading all of our stuff. That's great. And then on the front of the equipment, I noticed there's like red dust on there. And I immediately recognize it as brick dust because it's like a brick wall in there. So I was like, okay, that's fascinating. They did some hammer drilling in here, didn't tell me about it. And I was like, I guess that's not a big deal. Well, we take them outside, all of our servers, and we open them up, and they are chock-a-block full of brick dust. I mean, those. I'm gonna use PC language here because I want to use some 4-letter words, but they were full of brick dust. Luckily, they had like 3 cans of compressed air, and it took every bit of all of those to clean it out. Because like you're trying to clean out a lot of stuff, so we had to like open each server because we wanted to keep them in order as well, right? Because we're picking them up and moving to basically a new building right across. So we're taking them apart, and as you like blow out one, like the duster freezes up. So of course we had to set that one aside and then get to the next server. Anyway, it took us 45 minutes just to blow these things out. Like that's how much brick dust was in there. I was like, wow, that's fantastic. I'm so pleased that you guys did all of this. Obviously knew that happened and didn't bother to notify me. So I sent them an email this morning about it, waiting to hear back. Haven't heard anything. Sadly, we'll see what they say. But apparently that was, I think, an emergency patch they were attempting to do for that UPS that was failing. They were thinking about pulling power from the other data center into here, so they emergency hammer drilled a hole through the brick and didn't end up using it, but, filled my servers up with brick dust. So that's one thing. That's one thing I wasn't happy about. Then we get in there, and none of our badges work anywhere. So that was fun as well. So they had to fix all of our badges, which was great. So, all that stuff was supposed to be done. I mean, our badges were supposed to have already worked to that exact space anyway, because we already had equipment in there via another company. So that was another kind of little failing there. And then, whereas we're Jimmy, or, he's like the server guy, so he's powering up the servers. I'm doing the network piece, and have the cables plugged in. Well, there's no link lights on either of them. So I call them up, and they're like, oh, yeah, it looks like we fat-fingered which ports we were supposed to put them into, so they stuck them in the wrong ones. So then they apparently fixed that, and then one port was flapping, and I was like, I've checked everything up here. I've changed our cables. Everything's fine. They're like, well, let's move the ports downstairs. So they moved ports downstairs, and then it came up. So then the routing wasn't working right. So we had to kind of work through that. And then the routing wasn't working completely, and it was something that could be impacting. So they had to wait for a window to do it. And that's fine, right? I was like, look, just put in some static routing, get us kind of rigged up. So while I was BGP peered, it still wasn't completely working right. And so we're kind of statically routed with BGP. And we hit the change window the other day, and I emailed them after it. And I was like, so are we fixed up? And they're like, oh, actually, we had to reschedule. We weren't able to get it done or whatever. So I'm still waiting on that piece. So I'm still not redundant on my connectivity. So that was fun. And then that night, I sent them an email and said, hey, can I get a power report? Just to see what kind of utilization we have. They were nice enough to put PDUs in there, but they're not metered, so I couldn't tell. And they're like, oh, it looks like the BCM's broke right now, the branch circuit monitoring for the power. So that came back a little bit later. Maybe somebody helped them fix it, but that's up and running now. So I was just thinking, man, that was a comedy of errors. It was like, who's on first? Right? And I was thinking, do you think, I was like wondering in my head, do you think they were just so lackadaisical because they knew me? Right? But I'm like a normal paying customer now, so I wouldn't think so. And like, what would your opinion be if you went to a brand new data center and this was your experience with them? I'm just curious. Like what? Like we got through it. It came up. I think we only had an hour and a half of downtime while we moved everything. So I'm not mad at it. And I 100% know nothing ever goes completely according to plan. But man, that was a lot of stuff that wasn't according to plan on that one.
It almost seems the inverse of like, did anything go right? Like that seems to be, it's like, well, something went wrong. Lots of things went wrong. I don't even know what I would do. I mean, because it's no small decision to choose a data center to put your stuff in, and then to go in and have that amount of problem. And like, I would understand more so if it was like, if it was a series of network problems. It was like, there was, well, I guess you did have a couple different types of network problems,
actually,
but like
several.
But if it was siloed into one domain of type of work, okay, I get it. But it's like, your facilities guys failed. Your, like, every single division that you would have touched, security, like, everybody failed.
Yeah, Pretty much across the
There was
board.
not one person that did their job correctly.
They're good guys. So I think it was that since my name was on the paper, there was just less attention paid to it probably. I think, but knowing me, I'm so laid back anyway. And it worked, and we got through it. It's just, man, I'm so used to me introducing all the problems, but it's nothing we couldn't work through, and we did work through it. I mean, that's what you do, right? That's how this world we live in works. You just move through stuff. It's just, man, if this had been a bunch of strangers, I would have been having serious words with these people. Like, I probably would have got a couple of months free off of this or whatever, or something. I'd have got something out of this because it's just ridiculous, right? Like, if I didn't know all the people on the inside. And some of these people are kind of like family to me at this point because I've known them so long, so it's like, you can't get mad at your Uncle Bob,
It, yeah, I mean, like, I'm just thinking, like, as I've gone into Equinix before to work on something, and just thinking, like, how mad I got when, like, one thing didn't work right. And everything else did. Well, like, one thing that wasn't in my domain,
right.
One thing in the domain of the data center that didn't go right, and how mad I got, and to then have thought that everything went wrong. Like, I can't imagine.
So we got a third of a.
I am pretty calm.
We got a third of a cabinet. We packed that joker tight. I mean, it's like airtight. We have that thing, and so I did that afternoon. I emailed them and said, "Hey, I noticed there's no perf tile in front of our cabinet. We got this thing packed tight, so it's going to produce a lot of heat. Do you think you could put one in for me?" And I think they sent a guy up there like within 30 minutes to swap that tile out. So they did do me right on that. So I can't say it was completely a fumbled experience. So there were some silver linings in there, which is nice.
Tangent off of that. So you said that you got a third of a cabinet. I was looking at a data center a week or two ago for one of my hats to diversify our upstream access and to enable us to get to new networks. And I guess a tangent off of that tangent. On their website, they have a calculator. You build the thing, the quote that you want on their website, and it's not a build, check what you want, and then we'll have a sales guy get back to you. No, like I'm looking right now. Half locking cab 165, half shared cab 135. Like each individual thing that you could choose is priced out. Yeah, it's like, so like I was thinking, I'm used to, big data center pricing, because that's where the IX goes for everything. And I was thinking, we're not going to need a whole lot of stuff. A quarter cab would be way more than we need. So as I'm looking here, quarter cab, $110 a month. Okay, that's pretty reasonable. Full cabinet. If I have a narrower one, see, what is this? 600 millimeters wide, $220. I'm like, wait, I could buy a full cabinet for twice the price of a quarter cabinet, and it's only $220.
Do they supplement power, or is power just a completely different line item?
Power's extra line item, which it was reasonable.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but I was thinking first, I'm like, everything in these big data centers is expensive. Every U that you get, not that they sell it by the U, but every aspect is really expensive. And ultimately, I'm like, well, I'm gonna go, I'm just gonna get the Cadillac of a rack, than a 750 millimeter wide rack. Do whatever I want because it's only $275. Like I was expecting to pay that for the quarter cabinet that I was looking for. It's like how awesome is
and
this?
I would even say
It's
build
like,
that quote and then call them and haggle with them because I bet you'll get the price even lower. Usually, if you talk to a human, you can.
I already so I know the people, some people there, and then as I requested that quote to be formally sent to me, it was sent from an email of a different guy that I didn't know actually worked at that data center now. I've known him for a long time, and he's like, oh, I'll hook you up. I'll get you this, I'll get you this. I'm like,
sweet.
Sweet.
Yeah, down here we've seen that just a little bit
even
too.
better.
So in Houston, College Station, and in Austin, you can't get that, right? You actually got to call, talk to people. A lot of folks want you to actually come and see the facility before they'll give you a number, right? Just we've done enough research that shows if somebody actually comes out, sees a data center, talks to you, there's the likelihood of them buying is so much higher, right? So it just helps qualify leads and stuff like that. But Dallas, it's a much more commoditized up there, right? They have so many data centers, so much data center space available that a lot of them do have prices right on the websites, which is honestly awesome because it gives you a starting point. Instead of having to just call 10 different people and then figure out where the pricing's at and then do all your negotiations, it at least gives you a starting point to talk to people with,
Oh, sure, yeah. I know. So I guess I babbled all that to say that the last time I looked for a small amount of cabinet, it was actually not that much more expensive for me to just get the whole thing, and then just not even worry about whatever I'm going to put in there ever again, other than if we do, obviously if we built an access network off of it, that would require more cabinet space, but anything not access network, I'll be able to do out of that cabinet.
Yeah, where I'm at here in College Station, this data center, far less flexible on the pricing as far as third half full goes. And to be honest, it's 15 minutes from me as opposed to Dallas, which is 3.5 hours.
Oh,
so
sure.
I was like, ugh. I mean, I could get a lot more flexibility, a lot more bandwidth and stuff like that for the same price. But man, it's 15 minutes away. Not that I ever have to touch it, but if I do, man, it's 15 minutes away. So much easier.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely nice to have. So I guess I'll return you to your complaining.
I think I'm good. I'm good. This is a good catharsis.
All right.
I feel empty. I feel whole again. No, I think I'm done with all of the troubles. It's generally you have a rough go of it right at the beginning, and then you're done. So I should hopefully be over it. I've got a piece of equipment I'm still going to swap out up there. I've got, we had a 4948 in there, a Cisco 4948 to do out-of-band management. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is overkill because that thing uses over an amp of power. So we are right at our 80% utilization on our power. So I've picked up a CRS 300 series, like the 24 porter. So I'm going to swap that out. So that goes from like 1.2 amps to 0.2 amps. So it's going to save a ton of power. So that'll get us well into that margin that we needed. And I could dual power it, right? I could put the barrel jack in the front and PoE eject on Ether 1. I'll be good. So for out-of-band management, it's going to do the trick. I could have gotten just some cheap piece of junk, but you never know what you're going to run into. So we might end up needing to use it for some production stuff too. So who knows? I figured I'd get something with a little bit of oomph just in case. Seems as though it was going to really help us on the power footprint. But other than that, I'm pretty much done. I've actually got it configured. I'm staring at it right here. It's ready to install. Maybe I'll do that next week. Maybe I'll go pop it in next week. Shouldn't hurt anything because it's just, out-of-band management. We'll see. We'll see if I get off my butt and do it next week. It's supposedly, for sales folks like us, it's going to be slowing down a little bit in the next couple of weeks, so I should have a little bit of availability. I could probably pop over there at lunch and swap it out real quick. Call it a day. All right, man. I see you have one last questions on here. What are some methods you're using to ensure your customers are being good netizens? I have to say, I've And my infrastructure never really done any filtering of users. Are you talking about kind of at the ISP level, or like if a user wants to like filter stuff for their kids at home, or what do you mean?
My intention was the impact of your users upon the internet. So when I posed this question other places, I was getting, it seemed as though that intent was not clear, because I was getting responses like, we don't filter anything, they do whatever they want all the times. And I mean, maybe that's the case. But like where I was trying to go with this was like, there's a variety of things that your users could do, at layer 3, layer 4, that would impact the greater internet. One obvious thing, low-hanging fruit, is spoofing, IP spoofing, to participate in, various UDP amplification attacks and stuff. Are people dropping, outbound packets that aren't from their IPs? Are people blocking outbound port 25? Are they applying, just working your way through the list of potential things they could be doing? Is there some sort of, is anybody applying connection limits to,
like ICMP flooding or TCP send attacks and stuff like that?
Just the wide range of things that's like, as an operator of the network, you're complaining that is being done to you. What are people doing to prevent them from being the bad guy to somebody else?
That's interesting. In like apartment networks, I've done that sort of stuff a lot. But like on the data center, like the commercial customers, I've done very little of that. I've usually tried to not touch their traffic as much as possible. Just, you never want to get blamed for anything. Like somebody that's paying you, millions of dollars a year, you kind of don't want to get your finger, have the finger pointed at you whenever they're having some major problem or something. Like, there's been times where we've had customers where they're like, hey, from this window for this 2 weeks, we make, like $30 million. So can you make sure not to make any network changes or to, what I mean? So it's like when people tell you stuff like that, that could be, it could be pretty detrimental if you screw them up in like these little windows or whatever. So, but theoretically, you're probably not going to do that anyway. But yeah, definitely on like my apartment networks, I've done that sort of stuff. So whole hog, like block, or do rate limiting on attack types. I don't know that I've done a lot of that. So maybe I could do more of that. But yeah, definitely block spoofing stuff. Block like outbound port 25 to make sure they're not going to be spammers. Make sure they're there, just the normal shenanigans, try and block that stuff. I guess I've done that, but I've never really gone too deep into it, which I guess for those apartment users, generally I have kind of a dedicated router per like MDU. So it wouldn't, negatively impact the performance of my core equipment. So long as that piece of equipment, because every additional thing you turn on your router is going to impact it somehow, generally CPU wise, like in a MikroTik or whatever. So if you're doing extra firewalling or matching or things like that, it's going to take a little bit of a hit. But as long as your hardware can support it, why not? If it's going to make things better for the greater good, I guess you could do that. What have you done so far?
Yeah, because not enough. I've done the BCP 38. Just making sure that it's only my IPs that are leaving. And actually, I was already doing that before I knew that was a thing, because one time when I was trying to work on something a long time ago with one of my upstreams, they were like, yeah, we're seeing all these other traffic coming through. And I'm like, Like, all these, private IPs are getting routed to us. I'm like, oh, well, that's probably just chatter trying to find a way out. So block it. Not even realizing that was like a thing that people actually planned to do. I just did it reactively. And, port 25, I've done some, I think, NTP port stuff. Usually, I think that's been in reaction to something, not necessarily like a blanket network-wide thing. I think I've done a couple different, types of services that being used in amplification attacks. I think I've done some work there. But like, I wasn't even thinking of this ahead of time. I just pulled it up now. Lots of people, for lots of very good reasons, hate Comcast. However, Comcast has a very good page on the ports that they block. They have a table here. It's, I don't know, there's probably 10, 15 ports that they block. And they list port number. Is it TCP, UDP, or both? What is the protocol running over it? Upstream or downstream? What's the reason for the block? Are we blocking it on IPv4 or IPv6 or both? And looking through here, like most of these things, like SNMP. Yeah, residential users aren't SNMP polling things. They're not doing RIP. They're not, it's like, yes, you should be blocking RIP from your residential customer. NetBIOS. There, I guess, is a potential for something to a positive use of it, but the negative is so much greater.
To be
so
public out on the internet. It's so funny when you're talking about this stuff. I've always protected myself from my customers. I've never protected the greater internet from my customers. I never, for whatever reason, I never thought about doing that sort of thing.
And so it's like, okay, so here's a list of things to just outright block, but there's probably things that should be rate limited, whether that's bits per second, packets per second, connections per second. There's no doubt there's things that fall into those categories of things that, okay, they should be allowed to a point, but your residential users shouldn't be doing 1,000 NTP packets per second.
Probably not.
And some of these things may not be things that you block or rate limit. Maybe it's just things that you configure your monitoring system to alert you on. Hey, this residential user is doing 1,000 NTP packets per second. You should probably go talk to them. And so, I'd like to, further some conversation on that with the greater community. Like, what are things that we should be doing? And, you're always going to find people that are at the extremes, people that want to do layer 7, and the people that say, just hand them an IP and call it a day.
It seems like it's getting harder and harder to do layer 7 inspection on stuff anyway, right? Now that more and more stuff's starting to be secure or encrypted or whatever.
Yeah, it's certainly getting harder, but at the same time, the other side of the coin is getting better too. Maybe not as fast, but it's like, various, layer 7 firewall type devices. I'm not sure you can build it on a MikroTik or not, but like a Palo Alto Networks or these guys that build huge enterprise purpose built layer 7 boxes. They can figure out on a TLS stream differences in types of content. Not by seeing what the content is, but it's like, okay, well, there's this many packets per second and this variable packet size. Yeah, that's Netflix. Or, there's ways that these people have figured that kind of stuff out, which is why those boxes are so expensive.
Yeah, I think some of this, Joe, comes down to what kind of return does the business owner, right, is you as the operator, what kind of return on your investment are you getting on this,
Sure.
thing, right? Like, I'm putting a lot of time and energy and probably resources into developing a system that's going to do this stuff. And am I going to see this come back in some monetary way, right? Is this going to positively impact my bottom line somehow? Or is it just going to be a time sink, right? Is anybody asking for this? If they are they willing to pay for it? You know, I don't know, right? I guess if your network's big enough, maybe, you know, if you're the size of Comcast, maybe you're going to do some deeper inspections to look for stuff like that. But if you're, you know, an ISP and you've got a couple thousand subs, doesn't make sense for you to really go down that hole. I'm just curious what you think.
Oh sure. Yeah, no, it's and like on the layer 7 hole, I mean, it's like I don't see a lot of value in it. Both from a liberty standpoint and from a fiscal standpoint. It's like, why am I getting involved in my customer? That's not my business. But two, to get involved would be a not trivial expense, and to what advantage? Now, obviously, all the other stuff, the port blockings and limitations and things, that's, yes, you should be doing those, but what? But the layer 7 stuff, it's, but that is my perspective in an area where bandwidth is incredibly cheap, comparatively. I see, it's like, on the Facebook groups and whatnot, anytime I see somebody is asking about proxies or limiting BitTorrent or blocking Netflix, my previous position was, this is just some cheap jag bag in a first world country, and he's just not willing to upgrade his backhaul or to buy the appropriate size internet connection, which is currently the dominant reaction these guys, these kinds of posts get. Now my first thought is this someone in rural Indonesia?
Yeah.
Is this someone in in rural South America? And when I look it up, I don't know that I've found someone since I started with this new attitude that wasn't in one of these desperate situations where I went on Nanog and I had quite an argument. I was trying to figure something out for a WISP, or a wannabe WISP, on Facebook. And, everyone, which is even worse because these guys are guys that operate data center networks, so they have no concept of a last mile or any of that. And I was like, look, where this guy is, a 10 megabit connection costs him the equivalent of, it was like $2,000 a month or something like that. And he can't buy more. Like, it's not, we'll just buy 20 instead. No. The only place he could get it, sort of a satellite dish, doesn't have any more available. He only has 10 megs. There is no just buy more.
I used to operate some MDUs way back in the day, and not a single one of them had enough bandwidth. So it was actually fun to build like all these queues and to make all this complex matching, to put different traffics in different buckets, and then you'd let it run for a few days, and you go back and look at the graphs of all of your queues and see how it all kind of stacked up, and then you could rob Peter to pay Paul, pull a little bit out of that queue or the massages. It actually used to be kind of a fun cat and mouse game to sort of squeeze those things, but I honestly don't want to do that anymore, and it's generally easier and more productive just to throw more money at the pipe nowadays, I find. And then also the idea that say like Cake and FQ Codal are coming down the pipe pretty soon, that we might be able to take advantage of that. So we could put a little bit of additional QoS on there without having to babysit it all the time, constantly change its diaper. I like the idea of that. So it sounds like interesting days are ahead of us. That was when I was young, dumb, and had a lot more time on my hands. Where it was a fun kind of challenge. It was like this fun game. And when I think back in kind of my history of networking, that was some of the fun parts. I'm sure everybody can look back and think of some of the things they had a lot of fun with. I remember, because I would take apartment calls from people, and I would, somebody would call in and say, hey, this specific thing's not working very well. Well, then I could figure out how I needed to classify that thing, add it to the router, test it, and then roll it across all of my routers. It was really cool. I remember some guy called in and said, yeah, I do this thing called Justin.tv, and where I can like stream stuff or whatever, and like watch people play games. I was like, what are you talking about? And so that was my first introduction to like Justin, which eventually turned into Twitch. So it's so funny, how you could kind of get on the front end of some stuff, or you'd see when some new big game was rolling out and people were having problems with it. Now, when a new big game rolls out and it crashes people's network with the updates. So I guess it's still sort of a problem. I don't know. I used to have fun doing that stuff, but I totally get what you mean. It's like everybody I see talking about that stuff nowadays really is, they're in a situation where they don't have too many options, right? If they could just buy a bigger pipe, a lot of times they would, right? That's not available to them. So I feel for those guys, because it feels like it's probably getting more and more difficult to classify those things. But where there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, sure. Hey, like that guy in South America that I was looking for, why I went to Nanog to complain, I think was about the need to put SSL certs on everything, even things that don't matter. And not just putting them on them, but like forcing SSL certs, you can only get my content via an encrypted place. And it was like, and it's Wikipedia. Like, what's so secretive about the Wikipedia content that it has to be encrypted?
Well, that's something like that. I would say
all these people were blowing up.
Wikipedia is so ubiquitous that somebody could try and man in the middle, just the regular HTTP, and you'd probably be able to get somebody after not too long a time. Because I think I hit Wikipedia at least once a week.
But then I'm not saying to block it. I'm just saying make it not required. If I'm going to a website that has recipes, who's going to hijack the recipe and make me put in more baking powder than I need? I mean,
well, they'll do some injection where it like puts malware on your machine. I guess that's probably more what they're going to do. But yeah, like some obscure website, nobody gives a crap. That's nobody cares.
But like, but why I was asking about that is that, it's getting harder and harder for these, proxies to do this kind of stuff. Or going kind of a different direction, software distribution. There's no reason why any software distribution anywhere needs to be done over SSL, TLS, whatever. Because you control both ends of the equation, in your software. Microsoft updates controls both the server and the client. You just push down, there's out of transport verification that the data that you got is the data that you got. Then you can have your Squid server running and it caches all Microsoft downloads and Apple downloads and all these things. The client is perfectly capable of verifying that the data that it got is untampered with. Some of them do it anyway in terms of non-malice, just that the transport didn't corrupt it somehow. So it's like, those types of things should be completely open. And as I was advocating this kind of stuff, they were, just buy bigger pipes. It's just like, but he can't, And so then if he only has this much that he can possibly work with, what's he going to do? You know, if in your world, now he's only selling people 256K connections because that's all he's going to be able to manage because everything's encrypted and he can't cache anything. But if he could cache these various things, iTunes downloads and whatever else, you know, he could provide a 50 megabit service for anything that's cached, because, you know, building a cheap MikroTik or Ubiquiti wireless network, you know, bits is not a problem. You know, throwing bits is easy, but it's the outside world that's the problem for him. And I don't even know how we got down to that rabbit hole now. I just realized I was complaining about that for a while, and I was like, I'm not even sure where I'm supposed to circle back to.
We were talking about being good netizens, and so I think I went down the rabbit hole of talking about how I used to prioritize and queue people's packets and stuff like that. So it kind of digressed from there. But yeah, I don't do a lot. I haven't done a lot, and you know what? I probably should do more. I might invest a little bit of energy in there. That might be interesting to kind of look at. So since things are slowing down a little bit here in the next couple of weeks, maybe I'll take a look at it. I'm taking 2 weeks off for Christmas, which is gonna be nice. I'm basically matching mine up with my kids so we can fart around. I say we fart around, but they end up doing their own thing, and I'm over here doing my own thing. Then I'll occasionally force them to do stuff. But I was looking at the calendar, and we've got one podcast just before, like the week before Christmas. So I figured this would be a good time to, there's only 2 of us, but interesting Christmas presents. So this year, I got myself 100 new pickleballs for my pickleball machine. That was baller. I don't think that's applicable to most people. But for Christmas, I asked for a new microphone. It's the Shure, I think it's, I'd have to look, SMB7, something like that. It's basically the microphone you see everybody use. So like the Joe Rogans, the Mark Marons, basically anybody that podcasts that's doing it in the big time uses this thing. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. I'm on Zoom calls daily. Well, I mean, it's either Zoom or Blue Jeans or Teams or Google Meetings. I just, everything under the sun, we end up running into it. So I figured I would try that to be my Christmas present. It is like a $500 microphone, which kind of made my heart skip a beat. Actually, it's, I think, like $399, so it's pretty pricey, but I'm going to splurge this year. So it's really kind of the thing I'm getting for myself is the thing that I also use for work, which is weird, and for these podcasts. So I don't know how much of a toy that is, but I want to do it, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it out. I may hate it immediately and mail it back, so, yay for Amazon. I'm not married to the thing.
Well, if you hate it, you can just mail it to me.
Well, if it's crap, I don't want to give it to anybody else either. If it's just bad. Supposedly the input gain is really low on this thing, so they recommend this thing called the Cloud Lifter, which boosts it or whatever. But the input device I have is really good. It's made for turning up the gain if you need to without introducing additional noise. Like the preamps inside are really great. So we'll see if I need the Cloud Lifter or not. If I don't need it, I'm just going to mail that joker back. If it works straight without it, I'm going to try that. So we'll see. I don't go into a mixer. I go straight into the audio input. So the voice you hear is unmolested. I don't massage it in any way. I know a lot of people go into a mixer and then they'll kind of turn up the bass a little bit to make them sound a little bit richer or whatever. But this microphone does a great job of picking up the low end. So I don't know. I may be less satisfied once I hear something else. I don't know. What are you getting for Christmas, Mikey? What are you asking for?
Well, I mean, I was about to ask for that microphone, but when I heard the price tag, I was like, it's like, I guess I'm not going to ask.
Yeah, I'm
going to
experiment first before I recommend it to anybody.
Sure. It's well, yeah. I've got actually for my microphone, I'm actually back to using the original microphone kit that you sent me. Not even using the blue, whatever it was. because this is on a boom and everything. I think you spent like $30 on this whole kit originally.
I don't even remember.
And it works great.
Yeah, I was gonna say the audio sounds good.
Trying to think of I think we're going to take another try at the autonomous vacuums. Kate got one for me kind of as a surprise a couple of years ago, and I was annoyed that she had done it, because why she bought it is because I was like, man, I think Monoprice had some for like 50% off, and I just missed the window, and it was like $100, and I was like, damn it, I missed that sale, blah blah blah. Well, then she just went and bought something, and it wasn't that bad to start, but then like as time went on, it was like there's just software product to software problem. It would never return to its base. It was always getting lost. And the manufacturer was like, well, we'll give you a credit for the amount that you paid towards getting a new one from us. I'm like, well, wait a minute. So since she bought it at Target on some sale or whatever, I would actually have to pay you money to get another one of the same thing I already have and don't like. And your next better option is another $500. And I have no guarantees it's not going to suck, because some of this is software. So we just stopped trying to go down that route for a while. And more of our friends have gotten them, and they worked all right for them. So I think we're going to take another stab at it. I forget which one she's looking at, but it's, it cleans itself, and it has a spot where it dumps the garbage into, and supposedly it doesn't get lost. So,
dude, Christmas presents for old people like us are so boring. It's so not exciting anymore.
And the old one had Wi-Fi, but it was just really basic, and I think the newer ones have a lot better Wi-Fi on them. For doing not that the Wi-Fi is technically better, but just doing more stuff with it.
What'd you get for Kate?
I'm pretty bad. Well, it's kind of nothing yet.
I got my wife some AirPod Pros. She seems to like them. She had said something earlier in the year about wanting to get a new Apple Watch, and then so as time, then it released, and then as getting closer, it was like, I started to kind of probe a little bit to see, what color it is that she would want, but then also trying to figure something else out, because she hadn't worn the one that she had for 6 months, because she stopped wearing things at work due to COVID. Just more complicated to, sanitize and whatnot. So do I go buy her an Apple Watch just to have it sit there in a box? I could buy her the next one. And she started wearing her old one the other day, so I think that's the indication that, okay, she will use it. It's not like I gotta refresh myself and what color she wants and all that crap. I'm pretty simple. Well, actually, that vacuum I think she's getting, so it's not even a gift for me, really. It's just something that I'm letting her get. What did I ask for? It's like, I haven't really asked for much, really. I think I asked for a desktop USB power supply, like not like the little wall warts where you have 2 or 4 plugs, but like I've got so much stuff on my desk that's USB now. I've got this microphone, the power supply for it. I got various chargers of various things. I got some other stuff, and it's like I got so many cables going all over the place.
And Monoprice has a nice little thing that sits on your desk. It's got like 8, I think, USB ports on it. But that's like $15. It's like not something like, I'm like, for months I was thinking like, what could I ask for? It's like, what would I buy that I'm just not going to buy for myself and just tell somebody else, hey, buy this for me.
Yeah, for sure. How
I had other stuff. I can't
exciting.
remember what it was now.
All right, man. We're at an hour and a half. Let's stick a fork in it out, shall we?
Yep. And no one else really cares what I'm getting. I mean, by all means, you can send me stuff.
Yeah, if people on the internet want to send you Christmas presents, Mikey, how do they do that?
It's not that hard to find me on the internet, being as though that I own a business and the business is based out of my house. So you can probably find me. If that seems to evade you and you think you have a cool enough gift, contact us at thebrotherswisp.com. And,
depending on how cool it is, I might send it to my address or Mikey's. We'll see.
Hey, no. Okay, well, in that case, send it to the Gmail address. That way I get it too.
That is the Gmail. It goes all in the same place. All right.
Well, then I guess I don't look at it very much.
There you go. All right. If you guys want to get a hold of me, I'm Greg at gregsoul.com, where I regularly blog at gregsoul.com. You can find me there, ask me questions, comments, all that good stuff. As Mikey said, you can hit us at contact us at thebrotherswisp.com if you want to email it old school. If you're interested in joining our patron-only Slack, I am slacking because at the beginning of the podcast, I was supposed to announce our new patrons. We have Dale Riley, brand new patron in there. If you want to sign up, you go to patreon.com/thebrotherswisp, and then you throw us a couple bones. We give you access to our patron-only Slack with a lot of good stuff in there. It slowed down a little bit over Thanksgiving, but it always kind of does over the holidays. It's sort of picking back up. But then I'm sure it'll kind of slow down a little bit around Christmas, but then it'll start rocking and rolling again. A lot of good conversation in there. You can go in there and ask Andrew Thrift to clarify all the things that we've misspoke about, which he's constantly having to defend himself against our idiotic media attacks, I guess, that we're making. So any questions, comments, again, please send them our way. We appreciate you guys listening. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
One quick thing.
What?
Good stuff? Good
Yeah,
stuff?
it's still going.
Are we good still? Okay. So, I invite the audience to message us things that you want us to say incorrectly to force Andrew Thrift to come on. I mean, because I may not be able to be that wrong enough on my own. That's not way more cocky than I intended it. I may not be able to create enough things to purposely get him on. So, yes, tell us stuff to say that is purposely wrong to make him.
Yeah, I don't know that I have the gumption to make up some of the stuff that you guys would, but I'd feel fine just reading it out loud as if Thrift said it. So, again, thank you guys. Send us some funny stuff. We'll talk to you next time.
See you later.
All right, let me stop this one.
Ideas and some good comedy given. If you missed the show already, don't worry, you're forgiven.